plus and minus, what are the win totals? And then right there tied with what would have been 8-9, Oklahoma State, we did them. We start with TCU, 7.5 wins. We will discuss what we think is too high or too low. And, of course, this is just the preliminary before we get back to it again at length in the summer. Craig, we start with you with TCU.
Yeah, they've got a lot of production coming back on defense. They've got Andy Avalos now taking over as defensive coordinator. I like both those moves. I think Josh Hoover, even though experiencing some of those young quarterback pains, will ultimately serve him well moving forward. I think that they took a different approach in the transfer portal instead of going and getting the Alabama guys or the big names who were 4-star recruits, 5-star recruits a couple of years ago, and we're now on the move after not really producing much. Instead of that being treated as like you're landing the same 4- and 5-star guy that signed with Alabama, I think that they've now thought about it differently and said, well, maybe the guy from Texas State's better than the guy from Alabama. Maybe that guy fits us better. So I think that they changed their recruiting approach a little bit when it came to the transfer portal, and that should serve them better than it did last year because, quite frankly, that didn't really help them, that great transfer portal grab bag of guys that they ended up getting. So looking at their schedule, I mean, Stanford's an interesting non-con there in week 1. You've got SMU on the road as well, even though that's just a short little jaunt there. But, man, this is why Vegas is Vegas. It's a great number to throw on there at 7.5 because that's like right where I am with them. And I think I'm going to go over with TCU at 8-4 and a bounce back for Sonny Dykes from not making a bowl game a year ago. But that 7.5 is a great number because I could easily flip-flop the other way, but I'll go 8 wins for TCU next season.
You know why, Craig and Paul, that teams like have the logo names like Alabama, Oklahoma, Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Michigan, why they are who they are? Because when they win, they can win consistently. Now, that doesn't mean they have ups and downs because Michigan has had that and so has Texas. But the difference is, for the most part, when they get on a run, they get on a run and they stay there. That's what TCU last year, that was going to drop no matter what. And if it had not, my goodness, good for Sonny Dykes and company. So they were way, way above overmodulated in 2022, and then they underperformed in 2023. So man, they're right there, right in the sweet spot. I'm going to say that. I'm going to go ahead and say that that's too low. I'm going to take that they'll get to 8. I just feel like Sonny Dykes will correct it like the market does, and I say they'll be above 7.5.
The third week of the season, they play UCF at home, and that game is probably going to tell us a lot about who both these teams are in their current format. Quarterback is the big question for me coming back, but Kendall Briles is a pretty good quarterback coach. He's got enough skins on the wall.
He's got something to prove this year.
Yeah, and he's got something to prove. So I will lean to agree with you. Now, where I will change my mind if UCF wins that game on the road with KJ Jefferson, then I might say that they're going to go 7-5. But I won't go. I'm going over at 8, but I'm not. If I went under, I'm not saying they're going to win 5 again or 6. I think they're at 7 or 8, which is why this is a sweet spot number. So yeah,
it's what Vegas does.
I'll go over with 8. I think that especially if they get hot late. And they have a tough stretch. Look, at SMU is not going to be easy. That's a big rivalry game. It's going to be the last time they play it for a little while. SMU should be pretty good.
The middle of their schedule will dictate. They got 3 road games in 4 weeks. That SMU, you've got Kansas, and then you've got Houston at home, and then you've got Utah on the road. I mean, that stretch right there, those 3 road games could very well dictate which way they go with that win total right there. But yeah, I'm going above, like I guess we all are here, and it is a tough schedule, though. So if they get into trouble early on or in the middle part of that little road stretch, that they could easily find themselves trying to keep their heads above water.
They kind of went through that NFL Super Bowl team that loses funk the next year. They did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, they beat them up really badly in that game, and then most of the team left. I mean, like they were not going to be back in the playoff. I just think it's surprising that they were not in a bowl at all.
Well, I mean, they lost to Colorado. Who knew what the heck Colorado even was? I mean, it was Deion's very first game. It was a shootout. They lost by 3. They lost some other close games, 3 points to West Virginia, 7 to Texas Tech on the road, 3 points against Texas. Now, they got blown out a couple of times for sure. But yeah, I think that they'll right the ship and get back to, I think 8-4 is not some crazy record for a TCU at this point. So yeah, let's all go over here.
All right, I don't know much about exactly, but West Virginia last year, the team that so many people, and I say I don't know much about them, how their depth chart will shake out. They were pooped on, and they took it seriously, and they were pissed off about it. Neil Brown said about it all throughout Big 12 media days. I am not going under with West Virginia. I'm not sure how above they'll go, but I will take above 6.5 just because I missed on them so badly, which is why I don't gamble in Vegas or anywhere else, because I would be up and down like an emotional roller coaster. But I'm taking above West Virginia because, my God, I was wrong about them last year.
Oh, look, they have essentially the same non-conference schedule that they had last year, which but Penn State comes to Morgantown, which I'll be very interested to see on Saturday, August 31st. But at Pitt, again, that's a toss-up game because it's a rivalry. It's been close the 2 years that they've played so far. Kansas at home, at Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State, at Arizona is a really rough stretch. But given all that they have coming back and the way that they seem to have solidified this team, and they don't have tragic losses outside of they've lost a couple defensive linemen and another guy in the transfer portal, but it's not like the 27 guys they lost where it felt like half of them went to Tennessee 2-3 years ago. That they don't have that. They have a lot coming back. This is an 8-4 team. I'm going to take the over. I may be naive, and West Virginia people watching the show might say, Paul, we don't believe in Neil Brown. Why should you? But I believe more than most. So I'm going to take over on this one.
I'm going to take over on 6.5. I think that you've got basically your entire offense, and I know Zach Frazier's leaving, but as far as returning production goes, you've got a significant chunk of your offense back. Your defense is a different question. Defense is a bit of a different question, so you had to address that. And we'll see on the other end how that looks, but I think the offense is going to be good enough to keep them in most games, if not win a lot of those games. So I think that's a low enough number. Like if it was at 7.5, then maybe I'd balk a little bit more, but I like that just fine for West Virginia. And looking at their schedule, I think it's going to be manageable enough to try and get that done. That Penn State game, I'll just chalk that up as a loss, and I still feel like they can go beat Pitt again. You've got Kansas at home. You've got Iowa State at home. You've got Baylor at home. You got UCF at home. Now, you do have some tough road trips. I mean, going to Lubbock's never easy. Going to Stillwater, those are going to be tough. But, I mean, if you're giving them 4 wins to lose or 4 games to lose, then, okay, well, they lose those games, but they win the rest of them. So, yeah, I'll go 7 wins for West Virginia, yeah.
All right, so we have all of us over on TCU, right there at where they are, but just slightly over. And then also we say over on West Virginia. Baylor, 5.5. They had the crater of an ending in 2022. They were a mess from start to finish, except the one miraculous comeback at UCF. But they were a mess. They have had mass changes. They have gone to the portal. They have changed the coaching staff yet again. Baylor at 5.5. Paul, I'll start with you.
I'm going to say over. Barely. I don't love...
That would get them in a bowl.
Yes. I don't love the schedule for them. I don't love it. And I loved it last year, and they went 3-9. So this is not a team like, when you point to Texas Tech a couple years ago, like, hey, they fixed their road problems and they're going to be better, which they kind of fixed their road problems and then lost a couple at home that they normally wouldn't have. So it's like they traded one for another. But with Baylor, they got to fix their everything problems. They were not winning at home or on the road. Like they won 2 games on the road to Cincinnati and UCF was a miracle, ridiculous comeback. But yeah, to only beat the LIU Sharks last year was
it was a disaster.
It was a disaster at home.
The whole season.
It was a disaster.
And even that game wasn't that game delayed? Was that the one?
It was delayed. Yeah, and before the delay, LIU was kind of hanging in a little bit. They weren't going to win, but they were giving their best shot. At Utah very early in the season, at Colorado very early in the season, at Iowa State in October, and at Texas Tech classically places they have never really played well before. I mean, Utah not, but like Utah's tough at home. Like those are going to be tough. How they make it through that first month will tell you. I'm going to say 6 because I do really like what I've watched on old film of DeQuan Finn. I really like bringing Jake Spavital. I don't know what they've done along the offensive line. I like what they've done trying to reboot the roster as much as they can in a short amount of time. So I'll give them 6, but I have no confidence past that.
Initially, I was going to say over, and I think I'm going to say under. And I think they're going to be a 5-win team as it stands right now, because when I look at their schedule, games that I used to just give them the benefit of the doubt, I don't feel like I can do that anymore after the last couple of years. So I see them as a 5-win team. I think if things break well, 6 or 7 wins. Beyond that, I think things would have to break exceptionally well, because where are the wins coming from? I mean, are you magically going to start beating TCU? You haven't done it in forever. Utah on the road, I don't believe that you're going to go win that game. Iowa State and Ames, I don't feel great about that. In Lubbock, don't feel great about that. Oklahoma State, you don't really ever beat them in the regular season, or at least it feels like it's been a while, even though it's not been forever. It feels like it's been a while, though. So I'm going to Morgantown. I don't know. I can see you beating Houston. You didn't even do that last year. I can see you beating, obviously, Tarleton State and Air Force. You didn't beat Air Force. I mean, I know it's not the same as a bowl game from 2 years ago, but it's like
it's a scar.
You just can't give them that win, though, is my point. So there's one give-me on the entire schedule. It's the first game of the year, and beyond that, I don't think there's a give-me. So my brain initially said go with 6 wins and say over, but I don't think they deserve the benefit of the doubt. So I'm going to go under with 5 wins with Baylor.
Man, I
want them to be better than that, obviously.
I talked myself into it while you guys were doing the other teams, and I'm going to stick with it. But like, I was exactly where Craig was.
Are you going to go wash your mouth out with soap?
5 minutes ago, I was like right where Craig was. Like before I said mine, like I just right where and it's because. Like, I love, like, this is, honestly, with Utah, Air Force, Colorado, BYU all on it, this is the best Baylor schedule I've ever seen, like, collectively.
Best among who they're playing.
Among who they're playing.
Doesn't mean best that's best for them.
No, but, like, as far as
I agree.
Somebody's had to sit through some years where, like, the 3 non-conference games were directional schools.
Yeah.
This is really good. And to add the big conference is great. I love when any school plays a military academy. I love it. But like I said, I just hate this schedule. And to go again, and you look at who the quarterbacks are going to be playing are in this, to back up Craig's point. Cam Rising.
Hey, don't overlook Todd Whitten and Tarleton State.
No,
after what happened with Texas.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you right now, they don't beat Tarleton State and Dave Aranda. They're going to talk about hot seat. He's done.
He's gone. Yeah.
Toast.
So, but Cam Rising, who I think is the best quarterback in the Big 12 and maybe the country, Shadur Sanders.
If healthy.
I think he's going to be really good. Then they go to a really...
Fafita?
What?
Better than Fafita?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think he is right now.
Okay. Daniels?
Yeah. Yes, I'll take him. And I love Jalen Daniels, but Jalen Daniels doesn't play a lot.
Okay.
So
all right.
Again, but yeah, I think Shadur is the best if they're better up front. But they do play Jalen Daniels. They do play Garrett Green. They do. I mean, they play Baron Morton. Like it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I thought if I want to go into a back alley with a player that's a skill position player in the Big 12, I think Garrett Green might be the guy that I want to go into a back.
Yeah.
He just fun to watch him.
Give us yours. I
was going to say 6. I'm not saying this because eventually gravity has to push you back up, because gravity doesn't give a damn about your anything. It's about who you are. I do feel like with Aranda, with 21, with the players they had that were a part of another staff prior to that, I can't imagine that you just went stupid. And that's not the right word, that you just forgot about playing or understanding football. I think that he has been at a crossroads in a lot of ways. And I think he has just struggled with the way the game is. And I think now he realizes he's got to get over what he wants college football to look like. And I think we've seen that. I do get nervous about the fact he's fired coordinators multiple times. I think Gary Patterson's worth at least a win or 2. That doesn't mean it'll be against TCU.
So there's 4.
There's
if you're
4.
going off last year, so there's a win. So there's an extra 1. There's 4.
Yeah, so there's 4. I feel like 6 is fair. I'm not saying that because I hope they become a bowl team. It doesn't affect me either way. But I do think that they'll get the 6. The offensive line, we've heard the coach that's now the offensive line, Kapilovic, that they were very young in certain places. Now, say it. Every one of these coaches has said it, the ones that are incoming, the ones that are returning, go do it. And the players have to do it, but I do believe that they have just enough talent in fusion and the coaching changes that they'll get to a bowl game this year, so I'll say slightly over. All right? Cincinnati at 5.5. Craig, we start with you.
I'll go under. I think they've got a lot to work out still, and I think that they should be improved, but and looking at their schedule just doesn't make me feel all warm and fuzzy about them being able to scrounge up 6 wins. I just think going from where they were to a bowl team in a year's time, I'm not buying into that. I think that it's going to be a situation where you are returning a bit more on offense, but you're not like great in either category of offense or defense when it comes to returning production. I don't think they've done really enough in the transfer portal and recruiting that blows you away. They're like, well, man, look at all the momentum over here. So, yeah, I'm going under with Cincinnati and looking at their schedule, which I hadn't even really looked at that, but just kind of pouring through. You got Pitt there in the non-conference, at Miami of Ohio. That first 5 games before the first bye week, I could see where they're like at a 3-2, any higher than that, and then my prediction goes, I mean, they're clearly going to make a bowl game most likely, but I mean, they could already have 2 or 3 losses before they hit their first bye week. I know that doesn't mean anything in the overall messaging here, but I don't know how good that start's even going to be, and there's nothing to give me confidence that parts 2 and 3 of that schedule are going to be all that much better. So I think Cincy's still got a lot of questions to figure out, and yeah, I'm going to go with at 5 wins. I could see them reaching that, but I'm not going to 6 in a bowl game.
I can't sit there and have all 9 or 10 teams over, and I think right now I'm about 50-50, probably 1 or 2 above the notch when it comes to over. Cincinnati, I'll take under at 5. I think that's fair. I do think that at times, you know, I like what Satterfield was doing. I really do. But
should have beat Baylor.
But exactly.
If not for a weird kickoff
situation. Think about this. Baylor was 3-9, and
should have been
Cincinnati and also UCF were like not gifts, but pretty close to it. I guess you could say because you have to.
Was.
Yeah, you're right. So I'll say under. I do think that in the first year that you saw enough glimmer. So I will say under just because of also those who are incoming to the conference.
Yeah, that UCF game. I still think about it, like there's not enough time for them to do this, and then there's still a lot of time in this game.
Dude, I was driving up to Dallas because I had a family commitment and was sitting there listening to them get absolutely bludgeoned and was just sitting there it felt bad because I didn't feel bad. It's not like it changes my life really at all, but I felt bad for Aranda and the team, and I was just like, gosh, how bad is this going to get? And then by the time I got where I was going and got to sit down and watch the end of it, I mean, here's this miraculous comeback, and you thought that would spurn them on to greater things, and it didn't. It was just a mirage, basically, and they were lucky to get that one. Yeah,
that one felt like Guy Morris Baylor in the first 2.5 quarters of the game. It really did.
And you wonder if Malzahn slept much for a long time after that.
That screwed
I'm sure
them
he's
up.
Still mad about it.
All right, Paul, Cincinnati.
I'll go under on Cincinnati.
Okay.
I think they've brought in some better players. I mean, they brought in the quarterback from Indiana. I don't know. We'll see. The quarterback's probably going to be better because you can't play much worse than Emory Jones did last year. And I know I've spent a lot of time just like raining on that poor kid's parade, but he's a statistical nightmare. And so I think they might look better, but the record may not reflect it all that much.
All right. I want to get to a super chat because he's about to go play golf. Kim Coulter with a really nice $10 super chat. Vacation tip. Texas Beef House will be shipping my steaks to Puerto Rico in 3 weeks and Kauai in May. Have your steak shipped to you on vacation. Great idea. Thank you, Kim. Thanks for the super chat with one of our elite.
I can't wait.
There's that word. I haven't used it in a while, but they are in TexasBeefHouse.com.
Can't wait for Kim to bring us out to Kauai.
Yeah. All right. Now,
I'll give you guys the tour.
All right. I'm going to turn right around. We all did Cincinnati. Paul, you start with Colorado. We boomerang it.
Okay. They're at 5.5. Is that where they are?
Yep.
5.5 over. I'll take over on Colorado. I think that Dion has a lot to prove. The Nebraska game is kind of a swing one. Like both those coaches have a lot to prove in year 2, but I I like them to beat Baylor. I like them to beat Cincinnati. I like them to, I mean, they're tough. I mean, down the stretch at Tech, Utah, at Kansas, Oklahoma State at home. But I think they'll be better. I think I'm going over. I think they'll win at least 6 or 7 games, if not more. Again, it's about the quarterback to me. I think they've improved in the offensive line. I think they'll be better, so I think I'm taking over on 5-5.
They will not sneak up on anybody like they did at the start of the year last year, and then everyone just kind of pummeled them.
Yeah, I'll take over here. I think they can get to 6. I think having Shedeur back and Travis Hunter back and such a focus on those guys, I do think the focus needs to expand to be a little bit broader for Dion and company. But those are 2 pretty good pieces to start with. And I know there's other guys as well on that roster returning because they return a lot of production on offense and on defense. So I think they obviously just completely cratered down the stretch, but they did have some close losses. It wasn't as though they were just getting bludgeoned week in and week out. Now, there were some weeks that obviously were pretty rough, like the Washington State road trip, for one, was about as ugly as it could get. But, I mean, 3-point loss to Arizona, 7-point loss to Oregon State, 6-point loss on the road at Utah. I know you can't just carry it over year to year and say, well, that's exactly how it's going to be. It's the exact same team, but a large chunk of that team comes back. I think the schedule's manageable for them, and I do think that they can get to ultimately 6 wins. That Nebraska game in week 2 is going to be really interesting with them going to Lincoln. We know the Colorado State and the beef there.
That was one of those where they pulled it out of their,
that'll be that was a close game that went their way. There were some that didn't that I rattled off, but I think there's enough of a mix here where if they start off well, they can get to 6. But I'm going to tell you right now, if they do not start off well,
they're in trouble.
They're in really big trouble in that last month of the season because their third phase, because I think you look at this year's schedule and you put it into 3 pieces because there's 2 bye weeks. And I know everybody's not exactly balanced. Like their part 2 is their second phase is only 3 games. But that third phase, at Tech, Utah at home, at Kansas, and Oklahoma State at home. You better have your bowl eligibility by the month of November because otherwise that's going to get really dicey for you. So, yeah, I think that they can get that done. But, man, if they don't, what a disappointment that would be with Shedeur and Travis Hunter and all those guys coming back.
I'm going to say under. I love what Dion's done, and I thought it was incredible how that carried for a month into the season. I'm telling you right now, opening up with North Dakota State's no gimme because of who they can be, but obviously that game at home with the alphas that they have on that Colorado offense, and yes, they've brought in a ton of people on both the lines. At Nebraska, they embarrassed Nebraska last year, and you would think that they'll get better, but Kansas State, Arizona in October, neither one of those are good as far as easy and gimmies. And then you're right, Craig, the last 4 with Tech, Utah, KU, and Oklahoma State. I'll take under, and I know that will go against like 95% of the grain of most people, so I'll say under. All right, Arizona State. Craig, we start with you.
Team I'm trying to learn more about. I don't have a great feel for Arizona State. I'll say that. So I'm very interested in Kenny Dillingham and year number 2 and having had the bowl. I mean, granted, that was a surprise, but I guess maybe not so much of a surprise getting, hey, if y'all are bowl eligible, we're sitting out the bowl game. I remember just remember the way that started the year. Just started it off just kind of weird for them. But with Arizona State, I guess they've got a good amount of production coming back. I'm trying to look at their schedule here because I didn't think I was going to go first.
Wyoming and Mississippi State.
Yeah, Mississippi State in week number 2. That's tough. Wyoming opening up is not easy at Texas State. In week that non-conference, they might go 0-3.
But there are no games that you say you could take for granted.
So I'm going to go under here.
Wyoming, you wonder if that makes a difference with Wyoming. But I'm
going to go under here as I look at that non-con, and I'm not even sure they'll be above 500 with those 3 games. So, yeah, give me under for Arizona State at like 4, and I guess that would be a 4-8 record. And yeah, I guess I'll stick with that for now.
Kansas and Utah to open up October.
Yeah.
Kansas State on the road, Arizona on the road. I'm going under.
They do return a good amount of production, but I don't know exactly how well they've recruited this past cycle. So maybe that's a little bit more muster that I'm not taking into account, admittedly. But just based on the schedule and based on what we've seen so far, Yeah, I'd be more inclined to go under.
Okay, we need to speed up slightly the last two names.
Okay, I'll go under. This is a team that will look better than it did last year, but may not necessarily reflect it by overwhelming people. I love Kenny Dillingham and what he can do on offense. I think Jaden Rashada is going to be a stud quarterback. But again, this was a build from nothing at Arizona State, and they have to come up. So I'll go under. If under means 4, that's fine. But like you said, there's nobody on this schedule that if you had played them a year ago, they would have been guaranteed to beat as bad as they were. So
they seem to have gotten the worst end of the algorithm.
Yeah,
based on who they're playing, based on what expectations. That doesn't mean all of them will be as good as we think.
Cincinnati would have been like their only, oh, hey, maybe this one. But, again, that Cincinnati was better than them last year. So
West Virginia, BYU at 4.5. Man, Kalani Sitake, such a popular guy, but fell down. I mean, they're one of the schools that underperformed last year. I'm going to say under. I'm going to say under with them. I think Willie Fritz, right below him, probably brings a boost to Houston. So I'm going to say under with BYU. And I hope they have a good year. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to say under. Craig?
I want to say I think I'd lean – I think I'm going to go over for BYU. I think they get to at least 5 wins. I think the schedule – you could definitely map it out to where there's only 4. But they won 5 games last year. I don't imagine they're going to be worse. I mean, they were just there a year ago in many ways. So I'm going to give them and Kalani Sitake the benefit of the doubt that they've sharpened up that roster a bit. I do think they've got some questions just as far as what's coming back. But I think what's coming back, you weren't really probably hoping to see too much of that come back because it wasn't that great a year ago, maybe. But I'll give them 5 wins. Looking at their schedule, that non-con again, some of these Big 12 schools with their non-cons are going to have to be very, very careful because you're at SMU and at Wyoming, and so they're alone could find you at a 1-2 hole if you're not careful. But I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say they get to at least 5. I'll go over.
I'm going to go under. I don't like the way the schedule I don't like the way the schedule really falls for them. I mean, I could see them being 2-1 after the first 3, and then after that, it's just there's too much, And by under, I probably mean 4-8. I mean, this is a team that can pull out some of these wins. I just don't see it. So
Houston at 4.5. I'm going to go over. I think Willie Fritz gives them a bump. I don't know how much of a bump, but I think it's enough of a bump to be over 4.5. I just love the way he coaches football and the staff he's put together.
I'll go over as well. And I'm going to, reset this in the summertime, and I'm going to have to take into account with my picks, how many I've got kind of batched together because there's going to be some bottom feeders, and I don't know with how many overs I've gone if anybody's going to be not a bowl team, basically, I've said at this point. I think Cincinnati, I said that, and with BYU, that pick right there, that could easily change for me, saying over for them, but anyways, I'll go over for Houston. I say they get to 5 wins. I don't think I'd pluck them from the group as a bowl team necessarily, but I have to imagine Willie Fritz gives you some kind of a boost. Donovan Smith coming back, I think, should be beneficial, even though he's got some clear issues that he needs to improve upon. I think they've got some momentum. I think there's some excitement there that's going to give them the ability to go win 5 games. So I'll go 5 with Houston. I'll go over.
All right, we spent over a half hour.
I'll go under.
Oh, I thought we are.
No,
okay.
I'll go under. I'm not nuts about the schedule for them.
Yeah, because if we go back and take a win-loss column, you can't have 9 are going to be. Well, you could with 16 teams.
Yeah, I mean, and when you say over,
a lot of it depends on the non-conference schedules.
Yeah, I'm going to go under.